Hello friends, so we are at the end of the paper. This is the third requirement and the last requirement of this paper, right? Let's go through, and in this we are just going to take 18 minutes because I also want to teach you the time management, right? So 18 minutes only I'll speak on part A. If I have missed out something, you'll you will read and you will cover it, okay? So you have highlighted from your interview with Java and from your notes from the middle management focus group meeting. Here they are talking about the two. One is the notes from the middle management, that is exhibit 6, and the interview with Java prayer. Uh, exhibit 2. Okay, that there are some key stakeholder management and engagement issues at DCS company. You are now preparing working notes. What are you preparing? Working notes with relevant visual aids, which will form a key part of your presentation of the overall consultancy report, right? You're preparing working notes using appropriate stakeholder analysis, right? The stakeholder analysis is the stakeholder map, the Mendel's matrix, power and influence. So evaluate how the relative power and interest of the following three stakeholder groups and strategy for engaging them should have changed after DCS became a public limited company. So you have to say before the flotation and after the flotation, right? Shareholders, employees, lenders. Professional skills are for analytical skills for assessing relative power and interest and how to engage with the stakeholders before and after flotation. You have to talk about two things. First, the relative power and interest you have to assess. Then you have to talk about before and after the flotation, how you're going to engage with the stakeholders, right? So now let's go to the answer. Okay, working notes with relevant visual aids. Using the Mendel's matrix, it can be established that before DCS was listed or quoted on the national stock market, it had used the following stakeholder groups. So they are talking before and after flotation, right? Okay, you can answer any requirement in any order. Here they have talked about before and after flotation first, and then they have talked about the stakeholder power and interest. Okay, so before flotation, shareholders, employees, lenders, and after also shareholders. Okay, before flotation, they were private shareholders, comprising the founder's majority holding and possibly those of family and close business associates, employees, mainly non-unionized and loyal to a smaller family-oriented business, lenders, insignificant borrowings before flotation, presumably overdraft and other short-term loans, because you know that smaller companies, okay, before being listed on the national stock market, they are not open to many sources of finance. They cannot borrow as much as a public limited company could. They are not open to so much of sources. So presumably overdraft and other short-term loans. After flotation, what happens? Shareholders are wider group of public individual investors and 30% holding by institutional investors. Employees, they are most skilled staff by operating core staff mostly unionized, and lenders, now they are much more powerful and interested. They will be interested in the company because they'll be issuing them huge amount of loans and all, right? So they'll be more interested and they will also be more powerful now, the lenders, because in order to, right after flotation, a company needs more borrowing and all, so they know that they're relying on the lenders will be more powerful, high gearing and covenant in place. Okay, the following table shows Mendel's matrix posing a strategy for this group before and after flotation. Okay, so alternatively, okay, they are also saying alternatively, right? A grid could be presented. You could also present in a grid form, okay, because they told with the visual aids, where arrows could be used to indicate where stakeholders have moved within and between quadrants after being publicly listed. So you could write in any way, okay, stakeholder group. This is before and after. So before shareholders, they will be having, of course, they'll be having a higher power because they're the one who are owning and very limited shareholders, and also their interest will be high, so they are actively involved. Now let's go and see after flotation what happens. Of course the power will be lower now, right, because many shareholders will be there now, and but their interest will be high. They need to be, they cannot be actively involved like in a, like before flotation, but they will be kept informed, right, the institutional investors. Now let's go to the employees. Before flotation, employees have low power, but their interest will be high because they want to see how the company is performing. They want to see whether their job condition, their salary, they need to be kept informed, right? A person with a high interest, low power needs to be kept informed. And after flotation, employees will be having higher power. Interest will be high, but power will increase, right? They need to be kept satisfied or involved more actively. And lenders, they have low power, low interest, minimal effect. Lenders are not so significant. But after flotation is high power, high interest, they need to be well informed and keep satisfied. The strategies DCS company management would adopt pre and post flotation would differ as determined by the changed positions on the Maslow's matrix. The main change in strategy would be as follows in relation to the above stakeholders. Okay, so these are the reciprocal. Let's see. Clearly, okay, for the shareholders. Clearly, before the flotation, private shareholders, being the owner and his family or close friends, would have far more interest and power than the majority of the shareholders after the flotation. So the need to actively involve is less necessary after flotation, right? But evidence from the case suggests that there's a lack of engagement with institutional shareholders, which could be problematic as this group has far more power than other shareholders. Institutional shareholders are very big shareholders, they have the most power, right? So DCS should develop reporting and communication channels with this important group. Now let's go to the employees. Before flotation, most employees were non-unionized, right? And the culture of DCS was not to involve, engage, or inform employees and expect them to follow instructions. After flotation, 60% of the data communication workforce are now unionized, and additional employment legislation such as minimum wage and mandatory company pensions are being introduced, which will force DCS to not only keep employees and their representatives informed and fairly well satisfied, but able also to more actively involve them, right? Employees need to be involved in particularly regarding the pension arrangements. And finally, the lenders. Before flotation, DCS was predominantly funded from the shareholders' funds, right? And had fewer borrowings, so this stakeholder had little power or influence and possibly little interest in DCS, particularly if the loan capital represented an insignificant proportion of the lender's total portfolio. But what happens after the flotation? DCS has become increasingly more highly geared in order to expand into new markets, and therefore the gearing risk will increase. The risk faced by the lender is greater, and this increases the lender's level of interest in DCS, right? If the lender's risk increases, right, as a result, of course, they will be more interested in DCS and its ability to sustain this level of borrowing and to repay the original capital. As lenders have placed legally binding covenant on the companies, preventing it from exiting its current gearing level, it also has more power over DCS, meaning that DCS will have to keep lenders well informed and certainly keep them satisfied, right? Now you tell me why this analysis of stakeholders is very important, because if you don't analyze the stakeholders properly, you might not be communicating with them, you might not be satisfying them, you might not be keeping them informed. Then what happens is this stakeholder can take action which can damage your reputation, it can take action against you. The lender might withdraw the credit, right? The credit limit. If the employees are not satisfied, you will be facing a hard time to employ the staff, the right caliber staff who are well motivated. So all the stakeholders need to be analyzed properly. Now, I have finished this in around 9 minutes. I have finished this, right? So now let's see. We have more time, so we can focus on right now, since I have saved some time, right? Because I needed 18 minutes to cover that, but now I saved more time. Now I can utilize that time in my next, if I don't have, provided I don't have anything unattempted, right? I have attempted everything. So the last requirement, let's go through that. 3B, which will require 10 minutes. So criticize the CEO and the HR director's ethical and professional behavior related to design, conduct, and reporting of the staff satisfaction survey. Professional skill marks are available for skepticism skills in identifying ethical and professional issues in the conduct of survey and communicating these criticisms to the client in a way that is appropriate. Communicating this criticism to a client in a way that is appropriate. You need to use whenever you criticize someone, you cannot say you are wrong. Whatever you're doing is totally wrong. It's unacceptable. You cannot be rude. You cannot sound rude. Remember that. You need to communicate in an appropriate tone. You also need to keep your tone very appropriate whenever you are in a situation where you have to criticize someone, right? So let's go to the answer. So they have talked about all the 5 right. Now let's see. Professionally and ethically, there are some issues related to how staff satisfaction survey has been conducted, which we would like to highlight. Just see the starting, right? The starting should tell you. This is how whenever you start, just don't go and start you are wrong. I have gone through that, you are wrong, completely wrong. Don't start criticizing like that. Write the way you would talk to someone, right? Whenever you are writing an SBL paper for SBL, anything you have to write, okay? Write in a tone. Just imagine yourself that you are actually speaking these lines. Read these lines to yourself and see how it feels like. Whenever you're attempting, write in a way that you're actually speaking to that person. Write in a tone that you're speaking. Right? That would make your work very easy on how to proceed and how to write. Keep a respectful tone, right? You should sound professional. You should not get so emotional while you write, right? You have to be objective. You have to sound objective. Okay, so professionally, ethically, right? They are not saying they are wrong. They are saying there are some issues, not all. Okay, relating to how the staff satisfaction survey has been conducted, which we would like to highlight. Now let's read this. In theory, such surveys are beneficial to organizations. Right? Always write a line, okay, 1 line or 2 lines, just saying, okay, before going to the criticism, always show some benefit. Okay, what would be the benefit of you doing this highlight? How would it how would it benefit the company? How would it benefit them? Right? Before you criticize, so that when you criticize, right, or highlight the issues, they will hear you, right? They're likely to hear you and react on the issues. Imagine you go to someone and just say, hey, whatever you're doing is not right, it's not acceptable. What do you think? How will that person react when you go and tell this to someone like this on the face? No one will like to accept. No one wants to accept their mistake. No one wants to accept their fault in front of someone, right? Because we have this tendency, we always want to show ourselves as very superior, right? We have never done a mistake. We are perfect. The mistake is with the other person, someone else, but not with us. So whenever you have to criticize someone, it's a very tough situation, right? You need to deal it in such a manner that the other person's feelings are not hurt and the other person understands what you are trying to point and they react appropriately to the issues, right? So always try to sound positive and fair, and you should sound like that you are talking on behalf of them, you are on their side, and then start your conversation. Start what you have to write. What are the issues? Don't directly go and start writing issues. Okay. So in theory, such surveys are beneficial to organizations. Which surveys? Staff satisfaction survey. And to staff, if conducted properly, as they help management. Okay, they are talking about the staff. See how they are linking themselves as a staff. They are thinking their self from the point of the staff, right? Just see this, how they wrote. Okay. In theory, such surveys are beneficial to organizations and to staff if conducted properly, as they help management gain a better understanding of how staff are thinking. Okay, the staff survey. So they are promoting that a staff survey needs to be properly conducted. Why? Because it gives a better understanding of how staff are thinking, what their attitudes and opinions are, and can act as a sounding board from which management can act and make the necessary changes which can improve the culture and productivity of staff. Now let's go and see how they are presenting the criticism. Lack of integrity. Integrity is the key. That is always the main, right? So lack of integrity. Unfortunately, see how they are starting. They are not saying that there is no integrity at all, right? It cannot be trusted, but they're saying unfortunately. They are feeling empathy, right? Unfortunately, it appears that staff may have been misled in that there were assurances given that the survey responses would be anonymous, okay? But the personal information required gives the impression to staff that management can identify the respondents of the survey. Lack of objectivity. The second ethical issue, right? From discussions with staff representatives, it is possible that key areas known to be of concern to staff obtained from the informal grapevine may have been omitted from the survey, and the survey could have dissuaded people from giving negative feedback, particularly about confidence in management. From a statistical perspective, the results were presented in a quiet, subjective way by using graph styles which may have misrepresented the true findings, focusing more on the stats which staff found most positive, right? Just see the tone they are applying from the statistical perspective, right? The results were presented in a quite subjective way. They are using these words with very care, right? They're very careful with the words they're choosing, with the words they're writing. You need to be very careful with the words which you use. Professional competence and due care. The design of the survey and the way in which results were presented may be viewed as being somewhat unprofessional and may not have achieved what it was intended to achieve. This could have been avoided if more care had been taken with its design. Confidentiality. Okay, one matter of serious concern relates to the fact that some employees were identified and interviewed by the senior manager as a result of their apparent negative responses to the survey. This action appears to have breached the fundamental principle of confidentiality. And lastly, the professional behavior. TCS company management should not attempt to identify dissident staff or schedule and conduct interviews with these individuals, as it could be described as demonstrating unprofessional behavior. You cannot call on your staff and call on the staff who have given the negative feedback and interview them. It is seen as an unprofessional behavior, right? So the DCS company should not even attempt to do that. This is particularly worrying when some interviews perceive that they have been intimidated or even threatened by the comments made at some of these meetings. So this staff who have given such comments, negative comments, they feel threatened, right? They feel that they are being controlled, they are being pressurized. by the manager. So it's a sign of a warning sign, right? Another point we would wish to raise is the danger of operating double standards when the survey was supposed to be anonymous. But staff identified for interview were themselves required to keep confidential the fact that they have been identified and interviewed. When you answer, okay, so guys, we are done with this. We have successfully completed the specimen paper 1, all the 3 requirements. Now when you attempt, you will be knowing where you stand, what are your mistakes, how you have to answer. I have given you all the guidelines. I have stopped you where I should give you tips. What are the ways you have to write, how you have to write, right? Everything I have tried my best to give you in my videos. I hope you apply them in the exam. So that's it. And now it's up to you to practice past paper, mock, specimen paper. Best of luck. And I will also be coming with AFM paper. I'll be doing one AFM paper and show you how to go about AFM paper, and I'll be solving questions. We'll take one past paper of AFM and I'll be doing that. Take care, stay safe, and keep practicing.